about to begin. We want to welcome you to the Vampire and Devil Show. We want to welcome you to the Vampire and Devil Show. It's gonna be bloody fun. We're gonna kill everyone. Welcome to the Vampire and Devil Show. With lots of blood and lots of guts. Two horror fanatics and rock and roll nuts. Welcome to the Vampire and Devil Show.
Devil, my friend. Fashion. Things to wear. Possibly faces covered, but more importantly, covering up the bodies. Merch. We have that now. We are very, very excited to announce that Vampire and the Devil have partnered with our friends at Rockin' Horror Apparel. They are now taking care of the actual merch, the exclusive merch for the Vampire and Devil podcast, modeled by our very sexy devil right here.
Oh yeah.
But we have all kinds of goodies to share with you.
Got the hoodies, we got some shirts, we got some tanks coming up, we got some booty shorts, we got all the stuff you want to wear from the Vampire and Devil podcast, thanks to Rockin' Horror.
Horns up, fangs out.
So, Fangs, we have questions for you. Devil, my friend, chains, hooks, blood, gothic noir, gothic decor, gothic attire, just gothic and blood. My friend, I think it sounds like we've got a Clive Barker episode.
Oh yeah, it's time to bring out those whips and chains, put on that S&M gear, and get naughty, get freaky, and get killed.
Absolutely, my friend. But yes, Clive Barker, the great Clive Barker, who's been doing some contouring lately for the fans as kind of a last hurrah for him as far as just getting out into the public, which unfortunately when he came to our area we had a scheduling conflict, which is totally which is totally fine because it happens. But both of us have been fortunate to meet multiple members of his various filmographies over the years, which is always super duper cool and always really excited. But yeah, Fangs, get out there when you can. Make sure you're checking out your local cons or cons within a certain distance that you guys are going to be able to travel to, because Clive Barker is doing basically his swan song, his farewell. It's very well documented, Fangs, that he's not, I wouldn't go so far as to say declining health, but his health has always kind of been something he's really had to focus on in current years and stuff like that. So just be aware of that, be mindful, and if you're not familiar that he's doing that, make sure you're hitting up your nets and, like I said, your local cons. Get hook yourself up with an opportunity to hang out and say hello to Clive Barker. But dude, Clive Barker, man, I mean, first and foremost, of course, Hellraisers right off the bat. But we're going to talk about Nightbreed. We're going to talk about Lord of Illusions. But I mean, when we talk Clive Barker, outside of him being also an amazing writer with such an amazing catalog that spawned these books, very, of course, Stephen King style. But probably I would say that if you're talking to a horror fan and you say Clive Barker, the movie that's coming out first, easily probably 90% of the time, would be Hellraiser.
Yeah. It's like, even when we were doing this, we were deciding to pick a few directors that we wanted to talk about, and we wanted to put Clive in there, but we were not, we didn't want to necessarily, because Clive has directed a few of his movies that we will talk about, but he's been mostly just the writer for this. So if we went by like just the movies that he directed, it would be a short-lived episode, because he's only a few that he's done. But we want to add in, all those that he either wrote the screenplay for, ones that were based off of his books and stuff like that. And when you start doing that, yeah, it starts getting a lot more in depth. And then you start realizing, like, holy shit, yeah, there's a lot of source material that that people have used for Clive as far as movies. And just like Stephen King, I mean, there's still a lot of other books and novels and novellas and all that still haven't been touched, that I'm assuming that maybe the right person hasn't come along and moved Clive enough for them to do it. But there's always going to be more Clive stuff in the future, as far as like movies getting done and stuff like that, just because his entourage of all the crazy stuff that he's wrote. He's got a library of good source material that people have touched. But yeah, a lot of it, people tend to usually do a lot of this stuff. The ones you're gonna think about, like you said, the Hellraisers, and you got your Nightbreed and your Candyman and stuff like that. But then you start diving into more, and you see that he's actually done a lot more stuff than you realize.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Because there's even stuff that, like, there's franchises that have spawned multiple movies, like Underworld, that people like. I had forgotten that came off like a Clive Barker like screenplay and story that he had written. And I've been familiar with Underworld forever. I have them all. I've watched them all. I mean, they're great. The funny thing is, I actually got more into Underworld actually the more of them I watched, because the very first time I saw the first time I saw the first movie, I actually had to like watch it again to gain, and a couple more times to kind of give it a little bit more respect, because like it was back also at the time that I would watch trailers, and so of course they're showing all these gnarly scenes, and then I was disappointed watching what really turned out to just be dominantly a love story. Not that that's a bad thing. I mean, that's totally fine. You and I have talked on multiple episodes about stuff like The Crow. Love stories play a huge part in a lot of movies, whether it be horror or action or comedy, and drama, of course. But, that first movie, it was a little bit more in the forefront than I was like expecting it to be. But then when they did like the follow up Underworlds and got more into like the vampire Lycan mythology and backstory and stuff, that's much more up my alley too. So, I love stuff like that. But before we get into a lot of the main stuff, the one thing I thought was really interesting when it came to the notes and when we were researching with this was finding out how much he really didn't even like the movie for Hellworld.
For what movie?
I mean, for Underworld.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Which is kind of crazy. I guess now that I'm thinking about it, we might have to edit this real quick. It's
No,
not
it's all,
the
yeah.
it's not the Vampire Underworld.
Oh, it's the other Underworld. That's right.
Yeah, yeah.
That's right. No
I was
worries.
thinking, I was like, wait a second. I don't think he had anything to do with the Vampire Underworld, because I'm like, then that would have spawned, you would have seen Underworld 2 and 3 and 4 based off of characters. Yeah, the Underworld is that one that he did in the 80s, that like demon movie that's really, really bad.
No, I forgot about the demon movie. Because I had watched it so many times back again that I was like, I'm familiar with that movie. But then when I actually saw it written down in my face, I was like, really? It's possible? Because it was so strong. It's such a strong franchise,
Yeah,
obviously.
especially because, like, even whenever I do these, I'm always doing them in basically kind of chronological order too.
Which is what I was used to. I just thought it was the fact that we were like talking about just the fact that it was like, yeah, and he didn't even like this one. So I was kind of like, hey, I'm cool with starting off with a downer. I'm down with that. Yeah, that's right. The Demons movie. All right, cool. So, do.
That's why I just skipped that one. That's why I was like, yeah, we just talk about Rawhead Rex, but she doesn't like either. So
No, for sure. No, absolutely. But yeah, so get out there and support fans, because again, we love ourselves some Clive Barker, and it's so cool that he's been making the rounds. But again, Hellraiser is kind of kingpin when it comes to these series. You've also got stuff like you mentioned with like Candyman and all these great other franchises. But like any other screenwriter, director, you always got to start off somewhere. And he had these 80s demon movies and these kind of like crazy monster movies in Underworld and Rawhead Rex before we even get into what became the franchises that we associate him with.
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny though too, because I mean, I get it. Like he has a lot of disdain for both of those movies, especially with Rawhead Rex. He just didn't like the way that it looked in the editing. And when you watch it, yeah, I can understand. But to me, I've always been a fan of Rawhead Rex. I like that movie. I think it's a fun movie. Yes, it's not nearly as good and as epic as it should have been compared to Clive's book, because his book is so much better. I mean, books are tend to usually be better than
Yeah.
movies anyway. But I mean, yeah, when you look at it, yeah, it's like that book and that movie are completely two different things. So I mean, I get why he kind of puts a downward thumb when it comes to the first couple of movies that that he got into the screenplaying. But I mean, but you got to realize though, that's probably a good thing for us as Clive fans, because the fact that he had other people kind of make these movies that were based off of his books and his short stories, like with the Underworld and the Rawhead Rex, that he kind of went down and said, fuck it, I'm gonna do it myself.
Yeah.
And that's when the first Hellraiser came out, because he decided to say, he's like, you know what, I'm going to make this movie myself. I'm gonna direct it. It's gonna be based off of my book. I mean, yes, it is a little bit different than the book. I mean, it definitely is, different play, but I don't mind the different subtleties, difference when you have the person who made the source material changing it for the movie, because some things in books are just not very awesome looking in cinematic world. So you want to
Yeah.
change things around. So yeah, yeah. So basically, he kind of just goes screw it and goes right into it and makes, probably like you said, anybody who thinks of Clive Barker thinks of Hellraiser. It's probably the best one of the best movies that you're gonna see in the delves into this kind of like underworld, this underbelly, this hellish, this people who are obsessed with stuff, or this like this wanting and this need and this that thin line between pain and pleasure.
Yeah.
It's such a, I mean, like I said, it brought the S&M world that's had been around for a while kind of into the masses, where people were like, oh my god, this is kind of stuff. And it's like, yeah, these people have been wearing this shit for hundreds of years. There's with Marquis de Sade and all that crazy shit.
Yeah.
So it's like it's been going around for a while. It's just like, now I love the fact that he just kind of, he wasn't ashamed to put sort of what his aspect of life and maybe things that he was personally into his stories and into the visions of these worlds.
No, man, for sure. And I also love the fact that you brought up the whole like translation to cinema thing, because it's actually a cool little discussion for us to have pretty quick in the episode, because it's a very cool thing for anybody to learn that only knows the Hellraiser movies and is not as familiar with the books that they came from. Both of us are familiar with the books that they came from. And the thing I think is super cool about that point you made is that anybody who's familiar with the books knows that the Pinhead character, for example, actually isn't the guy. It's Butterball is technically the leader of the Cenobites. It was really about him. But there isn't much going based off what I've kind of researched just over years and stuff, and being a fan of the series, is that I think it had a little bit to do whether they planned an extended Hellraiser series or not. Butterball, I don't think really simply translated as a character that could have a really cool backstory to like pick at or unfold, and he might not have. It doesn't really seem that he ever did. He just was the boss. He was kind of the leader. That was just the way Clive wrote it. Versus with somebody like Pinhead, they really did a good job, I think, at least for, the first 4 to 5, you know, allowing those layers to come back, like how he became a Cenobite, having, the big guy putting the nails into his head and all that kind of stuff. But like, there was more to his look. The fact that he probably could vocalize better, whether Doug Bradley had become the guy or whether somebody else had become the guy, the ability to like vocalize better, I think, is probably one of the reasons why there was that transition in power or leadership when it came to cinematography. Personally, I'm kind of glad it went that way. Nothing against Butterball. He was always a cool character. I've gotten to meet Simon before, the actor who plays him. He's a very, very cool cat. But I mean, the visual everything about Pinhead is so much more cinematically, aesthetically pleasing. And I'm just glad that that became a thing and that he became the guy. I think it was just the right move. Sometimes not fully sticking to the script or sticking to the book sometimes just kind of works out in your benefit. But also as we get into the first, Hellraiser, we get introduced to all these awesome actors and actresses over the years, that continue on in multiple movies, and some are just one-offs, but like our beloved Ashley Lawrence.
Yeah. It's cool about the, even with the Ashley Lawrence being in this, and you got Doug Bradley, where Doug Bradley was, this is his debut too, his film debut. And it's funny though, because he didn't really want to go for the lead role. And like I said, it's tough. We're gonna name him, we're gonna call him Pinhead 9 million times, even though technically in the first movie he was the lead Cenobite.
Yep.
He wasn't even Pinhead. That Pinhead wasn't even in the books either.
Nope.
Pinhead was just something that the fans just kind of called him Pinhead, and Clive just kind of ran with it. People started calling him Pinhead all the time. And he's like, well, shit, then we might as well just call him Pinhead, which makes sense. Dude's got pins all over his head. So, I mean,
yeah,
why he wouldn't be considered Pinhead to begin with, I don't understand. But anyway, but yeah,
well, he was also a secondary character like we discussed, so it might just be that simple.
Yeah, and it's crazy because Doug to begin with was contemplating not taking that role because he was trying to get himself as an established actor, and the one thing that actors say is you need to show your face, and he was afraid of being behind the makeup and not being taken, so he actually was going to take the role of the guy who helps bring in the mattress, and which literally has like a 5 second, 10 second role in that, and then maybe like two or speaking lines when Ashley comes in and they say something, ooh, look at her kind of thing. And it's like it's be so much crazier just to think of that, where like imagine if he decided to do that and didn't take the role, would we have more Hellraiser movies or not, just because of how well Doug Bradley acted in this movie?
Yeah.
Makes you go like, that's one of those decisions where like he's probably glad that he decided to don on the makeup. And that heard that it was very tasking for that makeup. He was in the makeup chairs for many, many hours on that first one. Just like, I think they said they took like 7 to 10 hours or something like that to put it on. So, you gotta, especially being a new actor, and that's gotta be tough to kind of go through that. But like I said, yeah, I love the fact that, you have Ashley Lawrence's debut in this movie. And I love her. I love the fact that like I said, as we talk about Hellraisers more on, we keep getting a lot more of her, throwbacks to her, kind of like she's Clive Barker's Nancy.
Yeah.
Like basically sort of to the point where you can kind of throw her into a Hellraiser movie, and the fans are gonna be like, fuck yeah.
No, absolutely, for sure. And you get these other great actors, like Andrew, who's playing in this movie as Frank, and also improvises what becomes an incredibly iconic line. It's easily the line that I remember the most out of the entire first movie, which is Jesus wept.
Yeah. Andrew played Larry, not Frank.
I mean Larry. Sorry.
I mean, technically, kind of played Frank because Frank, if you haven't seen the movie yet, which I don't understand how you would never seen Hellraiser yet, so it's not. I don't even care if it's a spoiler or not. Frank where puts on her dad's skin and and becomes Frank. So theoretically, I guess Andrew does play Frank too for a little bit in the movie. So you're not completely wrong.
Yeah, it's because of that combo thing where I'm like,
But at the time, what you're talking about with the Jesus wept, that was him playing it as Frank because he was
yeah,
Frank at that time.
right, yeah, that's why. Because I'm like, yeah, it's his face is getting pulled behind that just crazy, horrific, like grin, smirk, smile, whatever you call that, as he just kind of voices those words, and the tone that he uses for it. Yeah, that's how I got things like mishmash. But yeah, Larry officially, but technically some Frank in there.
Yeah, I like it too because, like I said, this movie's pretty crazy. Like, besides the fact that you have this, these, Cenobite characters and all these other little horrific stuff. It's a very crazy and dark kind of like love triangle slash like obsessions and stuff like that because you have the Frank character who's an Uncle Frank, and he just got Larry and his wife just got married, and on their wedding night he's sleeping with Claire's character in this, which is Ashley Lawrence's stepmom in this movie. But yeah, I mean, even Frank, the stuff that Frank does and the way he kind of talks to Ashley's character throughout this movie too is very very ancestral, kind of like that, creepy uncle that oversteps his boundaries when it comes to like that kind of stuff. So I love that because I mean, not only is like the S&M part of it and the chains and the torture and all that kind of stuff, but you also have that kind of like forbidden love slash ancestral kind of taboo added into what's already a crazy story to begin with.
Yeah, because it's also a matter of, bringing in victims and stuff like that, allowing this person to get rebuilt. And, as we move also into like, the hell part of the aspect, one of the aspects is like the fact that how you want to look at hell in general, where the way that it comes across, the way that we discussed it in the notes is that hell is a prison. And the funny thing is, while it definitely is shown that like the Cenobites are like the guardians of the box and stuff, it's also the one thing that I've always found particularly interesting when it came to like especially Pinhead in general as he moved on in the series and became such a vital persona, is the fact that like people want to like look at it as like, well, is he a horror villain? Is he a this? Is he a that? The funny thing about Pinhead for me is I always considered him more like a referee, more like the guy who just kind of dictates who's in the right and who's in the wrong. And
Yeah.
always seems like everybody's in the wrong because people just get hooked and torn and shredded and exploded at just the snap of his fingers. It's just there always was kind of that little underlining bit of like, I guess, humanity that you could kind of use as a way to describe it, maybe stemming from back when he was, human, but he never came across 100% to me ever as just a direct villain. Like, I am going to kill you for the sake of killing you. It's more about, well, you kind of fucked up. So there's a certain amount of punishment you have to get for it. But I understand certain things too. And that was always just something I always kind of found very interesting about that character.
Yeah. I mean, he explains it perfectly in the movie too, where he says he's like, what are you? She's like, angels to some, demons to others. So it really depends on who you're asking. You know what I mean? And I love the fact, even when we go on from number one to number two,
Yep.
and you have that character, the in number two you have the little girl who's really good at figuring out puzzle boxes and stuff like that. You go, well, why whenever she solved it, the Pinhead and the Cenobites don't go after her, and they explain that even in that movie that they don't hurt anybody that's innocent.
Yeah.
It's people who she was kind of forced to open the box, so she's not really. I mean, it's sort of why Ashley Lawrence's character really never gets killed, because she's kind of like being forced to kind of open this or kind of do this stuff like that, where she's not calling the beast, she's just kind of helping them out or somewhat, where they want to torture her. And that's what I love about that. Yeah, that's like, yeah, they're murderous, and they'll kill you and slice you up and put you in a million pieces and blow you up and stuff. But yeah, they you have to be kind of a sick individual, or kind of want this bad, be a bad person or something like that in this. And like I said, and I love it. I love the fact that in the first movie, it's I love the second movie, because the second movie kind of mirrors a little bit of the first movie, where in the first movie they're bringing back Frank, and in this one they're bringing back Claire's character in this movie. And I to me, I mean, I love Hellraiser 1. I mean, it's an amazing movie. I'm probably in the minority of that. I actually think Hellraiser 2 in some parts is actually a better movie.
Oh,
I
you're a Hellbound guy.
Yeah, I mean, I think I like Frank's character, but I like her character coming back, and being murderous. I like the fact that you have the obsessed guy, the doctor that's obsessed with Hellraisers and the box and all that stuff like that. He's manipulating, who eventually becomes, I guess, I don't know, the second Pinhead, sort of, for a little while, when Leviathan takes him, and
Yeah.
till eventually he loses his head. But yeah. Like I said, I mean, they're definitely like as far as the first one and the second one. I mean, the first one is, I love it just because it's the introduction of it. But I just like the second one because it has a little bit more of that darker side. You get to see the Cenobites a little bit more in this movie. Like I said, I like her character more than I like Frank's character, even though Frank is in the movie for the second one for a couple seconds. But I liked her character because she's more evil, or in this movie, in part two.
Yeah, for sure. Does that mean that you and Roger Ebert aren't going to go out and have a beer together?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Apparently Roger Ebert hated the second one. But then again, most of the shit that he doesn't like, I tend to like. It's very weird whenever I go, oh shit, I like that movie, and he goes, I like that movie too, and I'm always like, what? Really? Me and him have the same idea? Because what he thinks is good cinema tends not to be good cinema. So
I'm definitely with you on that. But I also love, the continuation of the Cenobites. I always thought that, Barbie Wilde's, female Cenobite character in Hellbound was always so cool. I really loved that, portrayal, when it came to that for her. And I also, and it's also cool. I like the fact that, that you're, in really into like Hellbound and stuff like that, because we've got new designs on certain Cenobites, and of course, as you know franchises continue on, some characters get repeated in different ways, and other new opportunities kind of present themselves. And when it comes to like the third Hellraiser, which was Hell on Earth, I love that one, dude. Like, I'm a big Hell on Earth fan. So that's probably my favorite overall in the series. As far as like the movie that gives me the most enjoyment, that I can watch more over and over, I just really like it. I didn't love the Cenobites of that movie as much as the previous Cenobites, but I think they worked for the movie like really well. Like the fact that, in that movie you're getting, Cenobites that specifically are, you know, her colleagues, like the people of her life, you know, and getting just turned into these awful ways. I love the just brutal mass murder scene in like the club where you get the CD Cenobite, and all that kind of stuff, which I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but I'm going to steer it back just for the sake of Cenobites. So there is a little bit of Cenobites from Wish when it comes to them in this movie. But overall, I really like Hellworld as far as the way the movie is just portrayed in general. Pinhead being trapped in the tower, the rich, suave dick that owns the club, like, just bringing back girls or bringing back people to like feed to the statue, to the tower, and ends up getting it like flipped on him when he tries to feed her, and she kind of like knocks him out and is like, well, I'm gonna push you close. And I love the way that dude just got offed. I thought it was absolutely killer.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's like, yeah, I like that one too. You had the third one, like you said. I love the fact that they made these like kind of impromptu Cenobites, but they were very like, very specific to like certain things, because you had the DJ that turns into the CD guy,
Yeah.
her colleague that has the camera was her, like her camera guy. So it kind of went with the motif of like what they were in life, kind of turned them into it. But then again, it kind of took away from the whole Cenobites kind of making where the original two, where it was more of like that pain and pleasure, and these people kind of deserve it. Where in these movies, these Cenobites and these people who died are kind of just a you know, they were just killed for like the nonsense of killing. Which is kind of like a. But then again, some people believe that. I mean, there's a theory with the third one that it's really not Pinhead throughout the real movie, because it's him trapped in it. It's like kind of like a demon that was trapped into this thing, sort of. So I've heard like theories with that. That's why he's going around and killing it and killing people, which made sense. The hell on earth. I like the fact that, they brought some characters, like the girl who was the main chick. I liked her in Warlock 2. She was like
Oh,
the druid badass in this movie, which made sense because the guy directed the Warlock 2 movie. He also directed Waxwork. So there's a Zach Galligan um very, impromptu scene where he gets killed with a pole cue.
yeah.
But yeah, yeah,
Terry in real life, Joey in the movie.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, I mean, I like it. Like I said, and it continues on. And, like I know the third one gets a lot of flack. I mean, I wouldn't go. I know you say it, but I wouldn't go as far as saying that the third one is better than 1 and 2. But it's still a good movie. I still like
Yeah.
the third movie. The
No,
third movie
totally.
is a fun movie. And, like I said, when it goes into, you get into the fourth one, which I still kind of really really liked. It still had that good story, because the fourth one's more of like you kind of get a backstory of like how the box was made, and the whole reason of like how the puzzle box comes into play, which I still like. I mean, I like 4. Again, it's not as strong as 1, 2, and 3, but it's still on the level of entertaining.
Absolutely. No, and you're definitely right. Three definitely isn't better than one or two as far as a movie wise. One and two are definitely better movies. I just have a soft spot for three. I just love the way it's designed. I like the story arc of it. I just think it's like super duper fun. I love the rich dick just getting his just desserts and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. I just dig it. I like the scene when you've got like Pinhead, the hell on earth part where he's just like kind of walking down the street and stuff. And I just enjoy the movie. It's just got a very consistent watchability for me that it has always just kept it like really high up in my love affair. But yeah, when it came to like Bloodline, that one I had to give that one a couple of chances because I was so into Hellraiser by that time. I was such a fan, and then, and that's again, I was that S&M. It was hooks and chains and pain and pleasure and you know craziness like that, and then you kind of got that dominant prequel feel, almost kind of like Pinhead in space, even to a certain degree, where I always felt like there was a lot of movies that seemed like they were doing a lot of like space movies around like the same time, like Leprechaun in Space as number 4 and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, why does it seem like so many different franchises seem to be doing a space movie like around 4? But as I watched Bloodline more often, I definitely got a fond appreciation for it. Also, coming from somebody who's very big into backstories, and I really enjoy learning about characters, and I tend to get really hooked on those movies. But Bloodline originally just didn't do it for me. It just didn't fit for me as well. It was a little too slow of a burn for me until I sat back a little bit more, watched it also when I got a little bit older, and appreciated it a little bit more after that, where I was like, okay, I get it. Now I'm kind of picking up what they're putting down and understanding it a little bit more.
Yeah. I mean, and then and as far as the Hellraiser series, at least in my opinion, once you get past Bloodline, you might as well just skip everything else. I mean, there's redeeming parts of every movie. Well, not every movie. We definitely will jar past the two Hellraiser movies that are not part of the series, in my opinion, which are the non-Doug Bradley ones. As far as like I think it was Revelations and I can't remember what the other one was called right now,
Judge.
but Judgment, yeah. Those two, yeah. But everything else, like it started getting, those Hellraiser movies started to get less about Pinhead and more about other kind of stuff and kind of getting into it. It kind of reminded me a little bit of like, in retrospect, a little bit when you're thinking back, sort of like the Saw series, where the Saw series kind of started off really, really, really good. Then you just started doing shit just to do shit. And then, you start coming back into the Saw series and you start getting back into it again. And that's sort of like how the Hellraiser was. It was like that, started getting kind of bad, and then as bad as you were thinking you were gonna get, then it ultimately took a complete shit with those two that didn't have Doug. And then, they were talking about the remake of 2022. And a lot of people were, I loved Doug. Whenever you meet Doug, especially at the time when those two movies came out, if you met him, he still has it on his table. He's got where he takes plastic, but he also on his table he has, oh, no more remakes. He has a picture of you can buy a T-shirt that has Pinhead, and it says no more remakes on there. But as far he kind of ate back his words whenever you talk to him now and you hear stories about this 2022 one, which was a Hulu made film, and I loved it. I thought it was a cool refresh of what the Hellraisers was about. Now, granted, yes, some people may bitch about certain things and the political side of it. We're not even going to talk about all that kind of stuff like that. Who cares? I mean, the whole thing about Pinhead being a female character to begin with. That character in the book was very non-binary to begin with. Clive's characters are a lot of his characters, especially those kind of characters like the Cenobite characters, are very gender fluid to begin with anyway. They're just like angels in movies, where the angels sometimes are considered young boys, but you can have women play it because they're beautiful and so kind of beautiful, boyish kind of, but it's very gender fluid. And that's what I liked about that. And then the other thing people were bitching about was the S&M factor. Okay, it's 2022. Wearing S&M gear like you did back in the 80s was a little bit, at that time, was like, oh my God, this is kind of shocking. Seeing people wear assless chaps and chains and shit like that, that's every day. You can go to Hot Topics and buy 90% of that shit that's in the Hellraiser original movies. So
Yeah.
I like the concept of where they made this more of like kind of this the whole body modification sort of culture, where she's got the cut through her throat that's
Yeah.
helping the breathing, and like the
Love
veins and like
it.
their backbones are all in there. I liked it because it interspliced it made it kind of like the same feeling that you got with the outfits they had in the original one with the S&M, but kind of modernized it to make it more scarier and more frightening to see, versus a bunch of people in leather now is not very scary.
No, for sure. You're 100% right, bro. Like I'm definitely with you, Devil. Like I love the movie. I think it's absolutely great. And it's also very cool too because for any of you fans that don't actually know this, Doug signed off on it actually. While he was not stoked about the remakes and totally understandable. Like Devil just addressed, once you get up to number 5, when you get back basically up to Inferno, you can feel pretty Hellraisered out. You feel pretty good about yourself in the first like 5 Hellraiser movies. Then you've got like Hellseeker, Deader, which just fall on deaf ears. They're just not well done. They're just way too watered down and way too weird. I do personally have a soft spot for Hell World, which was the 8th one. Um, it just had an interesting concept to me, but I'm not going to backtrack into breakdowns of that. 100% like the devil spoke of. Revelations, oh my god, make it stop. um Judgment was better, and actually much better, frankly, but it's much better in comparison to Revelations. It still falls a bit flat because Doug had a certain je ne sais quoi when it came to that character, that the other guys just couldn't deliver. Not their fault. Script issues, different looks, different people, different acting style. Frankly, that's not their fault, but it just is what it is. Then we get to 2022 where there's the initial, for lack of a better term, controversy of suddenly it being a female character, where again, you've got by that time, 10 movies of a male Pinhead character. And now it has the feeling of like, oh, great, now you're trying to do this woke objective. No, not really. I think it's exactly what you said, Devil. I think it's like there was never any specifics when it came to Cenobites. What are they? Who are they? You kind of have to figure it out for yourself and make your own conclusions when it comes to that. But I did love the more extreme look. And Doug even liked this as well. But I loved the throw with the like locket or keyhole or whatever exactly it was there. The split spine, that ability to really get back to like that BDSM, that kind of like goth S&M meets sexy like thing. Having, a female in that role. Also going by the name the priest. She doesn't actually even go by the name Pinhead in that movie. But I think it was a really well executed movie. I thought it was very well thought out. And that's the big mistake, that when you're gonna make a drastic change in a casting or a gender, it's about, do you think it through? And I really thought they thought it through. I feel like they took their time with the script. I feel like they took their time with the casting. And overall, I thought they did a really good job. And I was happy to hear that Doug enjoyed it, approved of it as well. And he was like down for the character. And it was really cool. But yeah, Fangs, I mean, I definitely suggest like you guys go and check it out. If you haven't seen it, if you're Hulu people, or if you have the ability to go see it, I would go out and see it because I think it's pretty cool. I'm definitely with you on that, dude. I thought they did a really good job when it came to that. And I also like the fact that they made the box itself a little more versatile when it came to that movie.
Well, yeah, I mean, even like you said, as far as like, if I was gonna rank this movie into the Hellraisers, I think this movie is up there with 1 and 2. I honestly, I think it is a better movie than 3, although I do like 3, but I still think that this movie holds up with that 1 and 2. I
Sure.
mean, that's tough to say when it comes to, but then again, when you think about some of the other Hellraisers that came afterwards, you didn't really have a high bar to set. But and like I said, you were talking about with the laminates. I like it. I like it that they explain these different laminates and the different like shapes and stuff they turn, which is actually kind of a throwback to a lot of the other movies. You see the you see the like kind of dagger sort of like version of it in Hellraiser 2 and in 3, and sometimes how the box changes into stuff. They just kind of elaborated a little bit more where each one of these has like a specific, name and a specific thing that you're asking for, whether you're asking for someone to be resurrected or love or and stuff like that. And I like that. I like the fact that that they brought the freaking violence in this movie and the graphicness of this movie, and it's just, to me, like I said, I think it's one of the, as much as people were bitching about this, and oh no, don't remake Hellraisers and don't do that. But I think they did an awesome job. I'm actually hoping that they make more. I hope they continue with this version of Hellraiser on to make a couple other ones, because I'm interested in the look. I like the movie. I like the way that they did it, and I thought it was a super cool movie. And like I said, for me and you who are usually tending to hate remakes and wanting to remakes, yeah. I mean, to begin with, I was like, yeah, why the fuck you need to remake this movie? But then I thought about it. And I was like, well, I mean, you can't really do any worse than the last couple of ones that came out. So maybe a fresh look. And even when we found out that it was the female, before we even seen all that stuff like that, I was like, well, maybe a fresh take on this movie is something that it needs. Like you said, the series started getting stale. They
Yeah.
needed something to kind of change things around. So yeah, I was happy with it.
No, absolutely. I'm definitely with you on that one. So let's have a little change of pace here, Devil. What do you say? We're not straying actually too far from the Hellraiser world, as we're gonna rock out with some of their actors a little bit more. But why don't we jump into a very popular, cult classic within the Clive Barker universe, very much the horror universe. I'm a big fan. You're a big fan. Let's talk a little bit about Nightbreed.
Oh yeah, I love Nightbreed. I was a huge fan of this movie to begin with. I know there's like 16 different versions of this movie that you want to see, whether you want the original theatrical release, there's the director's cut release. There was the release that we wanted and we were asking for so long, with the Cabal one. And then once the Cabal came back, we were like, why the fuck did we ask for this Cabal one? Because it was just so, they you could tell that there was reasons why they took a lot of the shit out of the original one.
Devil, my friend. I think if there's anybody who would know hot things, it's you.
Oh yeah.
So I think it's only right that you let our beloved Fangs know what they can order now, courtesy of Coney Island.
Oh yeah, man. We're in the kitchen. It gets hot in the kitchen. And what else better for your finger foods, for your tacos, for your victims that you may be eating? Maybe some sauce. And you should get it from the sauce boss. Coney Island sauce. Oh yeah. Get some of that good stuff. Oh yeah. You like to sprinkle it on anything. You could sprinkle it on your fingers. Sprinkle it on your toes. Sprinkle it on your hose. Anything you want to sprinkle goes.
Absolutely. We have partnered with Coney Island Saucery. Aaron is fantastic. We really appreciate all the love he's given to the show, and we're very, very pleased and honored to be a part of him. So he's got 4 sauces out of various heat levels to enjoy on all your various foods, but also for anybody who is already following his socials, our socials, or is about to be, newly announced partnership with Slayer.
Oh yeah.
Coney Island
burning to fire.
Oh yeah, Coney Island Saucery does have a Slayer brand hot sauce coming out very, very soon. And so make sure that you check that out for all your various levels of spice. This is Vampire and the Devil, Coney Island Saucery. Thumbs up.
Reasons why they took a lot of the shit out of the original one to begin with. And like, to me, I think the director's cut is the best one out of all 3 of them, because it's that best of both worlds, where you have a lot of stuff from the original Nightbreed and you have that extra bonus stuff, but you didn't need, but this, all the extra bonus stuff is actually helps the movie, not hurt the movie, where the Cabal one was just way too much extra shit that we really didn't need. We don't need to see, Johnny taking a poop or some shit like that. You know what I mean? It's like there's a reason why this was cut. But yeah, I mean, I love this series. I think it was just a cool movie. was a cool concept. I like the actors in this movie. I love the fact that your main villain, Decker, is a film director and David Cronenberg, which is just a cool idea that, you got this guy who's, predominantly known as a director, is this, a villain that has been copied and multiplied throughout time. I mean, this movie came out in 1990, and yet it's still being kind of, regeared and copied and kind of paid homage to with, Corey Taylor with his mask that he kind of does. It's very, very Decker like. And Gravy from Mushroom Head is very like. I mean, there's been a lot of people who have done, you know different kind of masks with that one mask, and it's just crazy that like all these years later, the impact of that movie is still with us.
And it's so funny, dude. I love the fact that you addressed like the 16 different versions of like Nightbreed, because fangs are going to listen to us and at first be like, God, they've made that many remakes of the movie? No, they've never remade the movie. There's just literally so many different versions of the same movie. You want to know my musical comparison to Nightbreed, which I've said this before, not on the show, but just said it out in the wild. Nightbreed is horror movies equivalent to the Sex Pistols, that have one album, but you could type in Sex Pistols like CD on like Amazon or eBay and get like 24 different freaking CDs. That's like all the same music, different track listings in different orders, different covers, different designs, different this, different that. It's like insane. I always thought it was so hilarious when it came to that, because also for the longest time you couldn't even find copies of Nightbreed. It became a very sought after DVD, and then they finally released, the director's cut. It was this big, almost like when Michael Jackson's Thriller was coming out as the music video. It was like the countdown waiting on this, because I remember it as well, because I got it, and it was like when they were finally releasing like the director's cut, like this clean official release, which for a while was the only release you could get, because if you didn't want to pay $85 for like, that cardboard with the plastic clip like version of Nightbreed, like you had been waiting for a new official release that was affordable. And
That's the one I have. I have the cardboard one.
with
I
the
didn't
clip,
pay that much money for it though.
oh no, not totally same. I have a version of that too. I have the original cardboard version, and then I'd heard so much about this director's cut. I was like, I gotta see it. I gotta know. I have to be the judge. It's the way. But it's that same kind of thing, and I remember when it was coming out. But then yeah, it opened up the floodgates. And even now, you can find regular versions of like the OG cardboard guy that used to cost you $80 for like $10 now. And I was like,
Yeah.
wait, now that the director's cut's out in this like sexy version, I feel like people, which really might be the answer, I feel like people are just like releasing their previous copies back into the wild, since they've got this new like sexed up version and stuff like that. But I mean, at the same time, Nightbreed also has like music from that guy we love.
Oh yeah, that's the crazy thing about this. When you go into it and you like, you get these, the music you start listening to, and you watch if you watch the movie, if you miss the very beginning, whenever the movie is, doing all its opening credits and stuff like that. And let's say you're going to get yourself a snack, or you're smooching with your girlfriend and you miss it. You don't see the person's name. Then all of a sudden, you go and you're watching the movie and you listen to the music and you're like, wait, this music sounds a little familiar somewhat. And you go and look, and then whenever those credits roll down, you're like, why do I know this guy? Or if you're watching it now, you go on IMDb real quick, and you're like, holy shit, freaking Tim Burton's boy does other movies? Really? And
Yeah.
people seem shocked about it. I mean, he's done so many movie soundtracks, it's crazy the amount of movies that he's done, but everybody just thinks that he's only Tim Burton's guy.
Yeah. And it's hilarious too because like I can't wait till we do a Danny Elfman episode. Spoiler alert, we're totally gonna do one, Fangs. Don't you worry about that. But like the fact that Tim Burton, and this is not a spoiler, this is common knowledge, documented stuff. Danny didn't want to do soundtracks. He just didn't fancy himself that way. He was an Oingo Boingo guy. He was a new wave, kind of kooky music, performing live kind of guy. That's not what he wanted. It literally just took pestering from Tim Burton to be like, come on, man, I really think you'd excel at this, and I really want you to do it, to get Danny Elfman into what we now know as Danny Elfman and stuff like that. But no, I always thought that was so cool. Like I love just Danny to death in general, but I love the fact that he definitely got like, into this. And but also just speaking of the different versions, like you said, the director's cut is so great because it is that great hybrid. It's still kind of funny because if you're not prepared for it, it gives you those Lord of the Ring vibes where it's like, my God, there's another like half movie on this thing. And it's not that much. It's not that long. We're exaggerating, but it's still, if you know Nightbreed really well, and then you watch the director's cut, it's gonna get you from time to time. It definitely got me when I watched the director's cut because I didn't realize how much, because I watched it blind. I didn't read the DVD jacket or see how long this movie was and compared to my OG version. I just went into it blind. I was like, it's here. I've got it. Time to go home and watch it. And I put it right in and I sat down and that was that. And then it was kind of like, oh my God, wait, what? Huh? What? Oh, okay. Interesting. And then it goes back into the scenes that I was familiar with. So it was just kind of cool. It definitely wasn't one of those director cuts where it was like, oh, it's 6 minutes. Well, who gives a fuck? It was like, no, it's a solid chunk of time added.
Yeah. It's like 20 to 4. I think it's like almost up to 40 minutes. Yeah, it's one of those ones that if you've seen the original one, the theatrical version of Nightbreed, 100,000 times, and then you just put like, let's say you're on a streaming site and they happen to have that one. Yeah, you go, wait, I don't remember this. Wait, I don't remember them talking longer in the hospital or this kind of stuff and that kind of stuff. Yeah, it reminds me, which is funny because it's, we were talking about Danny Elfman and him doing Tim Burton movie. It reminds me of going to see Nightmare Before Christmas when they released it in 3D.
Yes.
I've seen the movie 9 billion times, went to the theaters and was like, wait, what's this scene? What's this scene? Because they added deleted stuff that they at that time, the DVD. Now the DVDs that you get now have that bonus, but at that time we didn't have all that bonus stuff. So it was like, and I've seen that movie 9 million times. I don't remember this scene. Like, what the hell? And that's kind of like how I was watching, watching the Nightbreed. It was like it'd been so long since I've watched the director's cut, and I've seen the theatrical cut so many times that it was like, oh shit, yeah, I forgot about these scenes. And it's like I forgot how, like I said, I forgot how well, because like you said, most directors cuts, yeah, they're showing a guy burp one time, or you're seeing this, or it's like, okay, you get a different angle of Jason Biggs humping the pie, and that's basically the only thing that's different in the director's cut. And it's like, really? But this one, like, you notice a lot of different things, which, like I said, when you go from this cut to the Cabal cut, which is the one that we really, really wanted, because Cabal cut's more of like exactly how Clive wanted to do this movie, but with, them saying, I can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this, and you can't do that, and some things just not having the budget for, and things like that. Once we got that Cabal cut, we're like, oh shit, man, we should we should have stopped when we got the director's cut, because we're all, the Cabal cut had been like, it's kind of like it was a lore for so long
Yeah.
that once we got it, it reminds me a little bit of House of Thousand Corpses with Rob Zombie, we had a conversation before with Sid years ago before he passed that there's an extended version of extra stuff that Rob did, alternate ending and stuff like that. And we've been all hoping and praying that it comes out. More than likely, it's never going to come out just because of Universal owning most of that stuff. But yeah, it's one of those ones where it's like, yeah. But then again, sometimes when you ask for things and you finally get it, you might regret asking for it. Where, like I said, yeah, which is funny because if we at that time director's cut, Cabal cut, we were gonna take the Cabal cut. We are gonna be like, fuck yeah, give me all of what Clive wanted. And then once
Yeah.
we got it, we are like, yeah, I see why he cut most of the shit out because it was just not. But like I said, overall, like I said, this is probably one of my favorite movies when it comes to it, just
Yeah.
because I love it. I love the characters. I love the way they play off each other. I love the freakiness and the monsters. How sort of like Cenobites in the movie, where all the monsters are kind of morphed into these creatures that they feel like they really are, kind of, and stuff like that. These inner demons and stuff like that. I mean, uh the his I can't remember the character's name off the top of my head, but his friend that guides him with the thumb nails, that I love his character in that movie. I think he's just fun. He just reminds me of like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre kind of character, where he's just like kind of like just like the comic relief a little bit throughout the movie. But yeah, I mean, I love it. Like I said, I love the fact that this movie is just, it's basically kind of everything you would want in Hellraiser, but then more of the Hellraiser's world, where you're getting this, where it's like you want to. And then, like I said, with that director's cut, you kind of delve further into that underground, and you see other characters and stuff like that that were in it. I mean, there's just the amount of characters that are in this movie from the director's cut to the original cut. The underground scene is probably one of my favorite things because you just see so many fucking weird shit.
Oh yeah.
The guy eating leeches and he's got a devil on his back. You got these berserker guys. You got, it's just so crazy that only in the mind of, I mean, if people have only seen Hellraiser or have only seen like Clive Barker's movies, they probably might not understand it as much. If when you read Clive's stuff, you realize like, just like Stephen King, they're like, how fucked up is this guy? Like,
Yeah.
just the mind. I mean, he's not. I mean, I love Clive and he's a cool guy and stuff. Like, I don't mean no disrespect for me saying that he's a fucked up guy.
Oh yeah.
I just mean like fucked up in a cool way, because it's just like, it's crazy the things that he thinks of, and like these weird, like I said, these characters in Nightbreed, which is like probably, like I said, is my favorite probably of all the Clive movies, just because you see more into the mind of Clive Barker and his fucked upness, especially with that extra 20-40 minutes in the underground. You see like, holy shit, man. Yeah, Clive's a pretty crazy guy.
No, absolutely, man. Because, and I love the way you talk to it about kind of like the Hellraiser world, where it's like almost kind of like that multiverse, that universe, like we talk about with The Conjuring, or even like superhero movies, because it does kind of make me think, and it kind of would make people wonder, be like, you know what, if you were to go home with, Pinhead, who would the neighbors of the Cenobites be? And I feel like your answer is Nightbreed to that question. Like, if you were just curious who lived in the same neighborhood as the Cenobites, it would be these monsters and these crazy cannibal and like flesh ripping characters from like Nightbreed. I feel like that would be your answer.
And then with all the craziness, it doesn't even, you thought you seen the most crazy shit you could see with these characters, and then you have his, what is sort of his Leviathan character, the main guy who kind of created all this in this, and he's even crazier than everything else. It's just like this big, huge, giant entity thingy. It's just like, holy shit! Like, this movie is just like, you thought it was bonkers. Now it's even more bonkers.
Yeah, no, 100%. And so as we continue on, it wasn't that long ago that we released our Wes Craven episode on the world. Now, of course, Clive Barker being a dominant writer, minimal director, but we're talking about his history of screenplays that have been adapted to movies. Like Wes Craven, I mean, where of course the big hit franchise was Nightmare on Elm Street, and then followed it up not a little while later with what become another huge franchise, and that being Scream. Clive Barker's work got adapted into another very successful franchise that had multiple sequels and also was redone by an outsider as well, similar to what we talked about with Hellraiser in Candyman. So there's 4 total Candyman movies, a specific trilogy, and then going way back to OG Vampire and Devil episodes, there was a Jordan Peele adaptation of Candyman as well. But of course, let's start right with where it begins with our beloved Tony Todd, and let's talk a little bit about Candyman.
Oh yeah, Candyman, 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 Candyman. Oh,
Candyman.
don't say it the fifth time. So apparently, the crazy thing about that movie, where as we're talking about it, and we're saying that you say his name 5 times in the mirror, and it's very very I was watching something, and it's very Bloody Mary-ish, where
Yeah.
when you talked about as growing up in the whole Bloody Mary and saying Bloody Mary in it. But yeah, it's really, really crazy though. But apparently, in the script, in the original script, before they started making this movie, they actually wanted you to say it 13 times. Could
Oh,
you
nobody has
imagine?
time for that.
Could you imagine if they would have filmed it where every time you want to summon him, you got to say Candyman 13? That's like saying Beetlejuice 13 times. Like, who's got enough time to sit there and go, Candyman, 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 Wait, how many was that now? I got Candyman, Candyman, Candyman.
Shit,
Okay,
I
wait,
forgot.
did I do 10? Do I do 10? No, 12. Candyman. Okay, he didn't come. That's because you only did 12. Oh, shit. Candyman, and then the 13th time they fucking get you. It's like,
Dude,
yeah, I'm
Candyman will
glad that
call
they
you at 7 just to
yeah,
shut you the hell up.
yeah, I'm glad that they decided to go, okay, yeah, that's just way too. I mean, unless you like because like Scatman it or some shit like that. Yeah, the half the movie's gonna be just them saying a name.
Like a
So it's
like
like
a
you have an
record,
hour and a
like a
half movie, and only 5 minutes of the movie is actual movie because the rest of the movie is all people just saying Candyman like 13
like a
times.
like a DJ of like a DJ with like the record, like waka waka,
Yeah.
or make this Candyman word go fast.
Yeah, but like I said, yeah, I mean but as far as this movie goes, yeah, this is another one of mine that is just such an amazing movie. I love it. I love Virginia Madsen in this movie. I love Tony Todd in this movie. I thought he this was the role. I mean, I love all the roles that he's done, but I think this was one of the roles that he was just meant to play. It's one of those ones that, yeah, you could probably get somebody else to play roles and stuff like that. I love the fact that it is a character that, other than the remake, even though technically in the remake he is in it, he's basically been the only Candyman. I
Yeah.
mean, until that 22 reboot where they talk about different stories, but eventually he's in it. But I love the fact that he owns that character pretty much. It's him. It's embodied into him. And it's just crazy facts that you get where he does stuff in this movie that you couldn't get away with prima donna actors nowadays, where they literally put bees on him consistently through all 3 movies.
Yep.
He literally has bees in his mouth. No CGI, none of that stuff. Legit real bees in his mouth. And you ask, how did they do that? They paid him $1,000 every time that he was stung, because the fact that they believed, like their bee wrangler believed, that these bees were kind of made docile, so they weren't aggressive bees.
Yeah, it
And
cost them
yes,
23
yeah,
grand.
but the thing is though, 23 sting bites through 3 movies with as many bees as he's had really isn't that bad of a thing. I mean, it's good for him because it's ching ching, but shit, I've gotten stung more than 23 times and with 3 bees around me. So so it's like, yeah, I'm not sticking them in my mouth and putting my whole entire body on them. So as much as the thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands, and I can't even reiterate, thousands of bees that he had on him and in his mouth through 3 movies, 23 times is actually a pretty good time. Pretty good to only get hit that many times. And like I said, I'll take $1,000 every time I got stung, as long as you're not allergic.
Oh
Shit,
yeah.
that's money in the bank right there.
Could you imagine if he got stung like 100 times?
Yeah, yeah,
have,
yeah. Especially
have
if it had
the
been like the
have the
first movie, he'd been
have the
like, "Fuck this, I'm not
studio
doing
go
it again."
like, "Fuck, man, we should have negotiated better. Maybe we should have offered him like 50, like $500 or something."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The dude's like basically a multi-billionaire from like, because that would be my luck if they scripted me to be in Candyman and they paid me 1,000 times every time I got stung. I'd probably be a multi-billionaire because bees apparently don't like me. So as
You'd make
docile
you'd
as they
make like
say
two
they
you'd
were.
make like 2 grand. Like it'd be like, yeah, you got like 1.5 stings or something like that. But no, it's crazy, man. But no, that I love Candyman. That movie's so great. And the thing I love, and we talked about this back when Jordan did the movie, when we did our Black History Month episode, where with like the social unrest, especially nowadays. And it's kind of crazy to me when people were getting so on the new movie, not realizing what the whole point of the original movie was about, with the fact that Candyman is a vengeful character, because the whole point of it was him having a relationship, basically a Romeo and Juliet style. It was an underclass with an overclass. Like, it was a minority with, mating with somebody of a higher status. And the bottom line, it was black and white. And that's the situation with that. And for this character to be, lynched and and murdered, killed, and tortured because of this affair, for lack of a better term, is the way that it was. And when people were getting on Jordan's version, which we'll get more into in a graze over, of course, since we've covered it after we get through the other 2 movies, was the fact that I always found it laughable when people were kind of freaking out about, like, well, it's a social unrest movie about, like, Jordan's just doing this because he's trying to focus on, like, the innocent killing of a black person. I'm like, have you not seen the original movie? The entire premise, the entire book, the entire screenplay was based off of that. It's a social unrest movie. It's about a frankly innocent man who's murdered for being different and basically being caught kind of with his hand in the cookie jar of a class he wasn't believed to belong in. And that's what it's about. That's the bottom line. He's getting revenge on these people that murdered him, basically just racism style. That's the whole point of it. But anyway, I
Yeah,
just
yeah.
love the first Candyman movie. I think it's so well executed.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, even with the, like you said, especially when you go, if in all honesty, the amount of the wokeness that the Candyman remake did, and people bitching about that, it's not even nearly as politically unrest as the original one. I mean, you've got the Cabrini apartment complex that is predominantly a black neighborhood and the cops coming and doing all this stuff like that. But not only that, you have, like I said, the Candyman character with him being killed and, the black love with the white lady love and stuff like that. You also have in the scene, which people don't really pay attention to much, that Virginia Madsen's character is talking about how her apartments that are these richy bougie expensive, predominantly white neighborhood apartments that were eventually at one time were the Cabrini
Yeah.
apartments, were the original old school Cabrini where they kind of were like, you know, brought, there was a bad neighborhood and they pushed the neighborhood kind of out. So it's a lot of that, like pushing the ghetto further and further and further to build these high rises and these apartment complex for predominantly rich white people. And like I said, people don't even realize that part of the movie where, I mean, they only skim through it for a second, but even that's a stab to political, incorrectness and stuff like that. So it's
Yeah.
like this movie is like, as I said, like you said, it just made me laugh when people were like I get it. There are movies that have tried to, you know, play on those kind of like, things, and they do that just because or at least how I feel they're trying to do it, just to trying to make people want to see their movie more, or kind of just like be in the in thing now or something like that. Where like, yeah, Candyman has always been, I mean, throughout all three series, it's basically a very, where society and in general are, it's just how rich, white society thinks they're the better race than anybody else.
Yeah. No, 100%, bro. And with the success of the first movie, because it did so well. Again, when you've got really good writing, it's very easy at times to be successful, and it spawned multiple movies, like we said. So let's pop into Farewell to the Flesh, which is more backstory driven, I would say, when it comes to that movie. It really it's kind of Candyman's Hellraiser bloodline, where it gets more into that overall, backstory of characters. But we also get, just like with Ashley, we get a role reprisal.
Yeah. It's a very, very short-lived role reprisal, but you have when in the original one, I mean, even though Virginia Madsen kind of has a little bit of a cameo in this because they talk about her, but it's more of like just the talking about and stuff like that. Where this one is like, you have the guy who was working that she was doing, that her boyfriend or whatever had these like snobs that were like the know alls about, lores and stuff like that. You had his character Purcell, I think was his name or something like
Yep.
that, where he kind of comes out, and you make they in the beginning he makes the joke about, saying the Candyman name so many times, and then all of a sudden he has a fake Candyman come out and kill him at his book. Just like anybody else, you're gonna play off. I mean, which I love about that, because it's kind of like that satire of real life.
Yeah.
You have these people who survived, a horrific event, even though he didn't really. He was kind of a third party to all the bad shit. But you have somebody like, you have a neighbor next door to you that got murdered by Charles Manson and stuff like that. And, oh my God, I survived that Charles Manson murder, so now I'm gonna write a book about it. And it's like, bitch, you weren't even a target, you weren't even terrorized. You have nothing to do with Candyman, but he wants to market on that, success of like, the people talking about Candyman. He's like, oh, I can make it a lucrative book and sell books. And he, plays it off like Candyman's not real. And like I said, he has a guy jump out of the screen and it's just an actor. And then eventually Candyman comes and gives him a real visit. And yeah, he doesn't last too long in this movie.
No, but it's a cool movie. Like I enjoy Farewell to the Flesh personally. I think it's a cool take. I thought their design of the movie was pretty solid. I've got a little less favorable things when we get into the third one shortly, but I like the design of Farewell to the Flesh. I think it's kind of cool as a semi-retrospective movie. It doesn't toe the line of like a cash grab, because my other thing when it comes to sequels is when they try to like kind of fuck with that backstory thing because it's close enough to the original to where you can kind of get that money flow. Where even something like the second Hocus Pocus movie, which everybody knows I love, not it'll never take out the original, but when they originally looked like they were trying to toe that line at the beginning of that movie with the prequelness, there was a part of me that was kind of like, oh shit. But it was more of just a building to the point, to a certain point, and then it went into the regular movie. So anyway, when it comes to Farewell to the Flesh, I like the angle that they took because I do think it didn't toe the line. It still gave a proper distance to it to still kind of let it be its own thing. And I do enjoy it as a follow-up movie. Now, Day of the Dead, on the other hand, look, I love me some Donna D'Errico as much as the next person. But this movie did leave a bit to be desired, bro.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, as far as like, when you get into that, the first one, the second one, and the third one, the thing that I do love kind of more about the second movie than the first one. I love the fact that, the first one is in Chicago and in that, in the Cabrini, apartments and all that kind of stuff. But I liked how the second one went into that New Orleans because you had that kind of voodoo aspect of it, which kind of makes sense. It's about, Candyman's a character. It's sort of a very voodoo-ish kind of story, you know what I mean? Where he's being killed and he kind of puts a curse on the people that kill him and, curses the mirror. And that's how he becomes Candyman, which they talk a little bit about in the third one. And that's like I said, yeah. I mean, as far as the movie wise, the third one, yeah. I mean, it's definitely the weakest of the series. I do like aspects of it. I like the fact that the little girl from the second one is more of her continuation of her older after many years, and you find out that she actually is sort of a descendant of Candyman, or Candyman's brought to life possessed sort of daughter or something. I don't know how to explain exactly how she is. She's Candyman's offspring ish.
Yeah, and I mean, and it's cool. Like it's got those fun aspects for it. Tony Todd still does great when it comes to his role in the movie. He's even come out and said that he's not particularly fond of it, but it's a fun movie. It's got some cool aspects to it. It's got some quality kills, which I can always appreciate. When it comes to terrible movies or things that I feel might be a little painful to a franchise, a couple of quality kills will always kind of make me smile. And again, Donna D'Errico doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, it just kind of is what it is when it comes to that one.
Mhm.
The Candyman definitely didn't have like the sophomore slump, but it kind of had the triple play, you know, fade away or whatever
Yeah, yeah.
you want to
But
call it with that.
yeah.
And then, and then just kind of closing off the thought process just to circle back around. And then, a couple of years back, we got Jordan Peele's adaptation, which was definitely modernized. It was very cool. Still had those cool backstory characters with, the backstory of Sherman and that kind of stuff. And then, despite the fact that the Candyman per se was not played by Tony Todd, but he kind of was, as he kind of morphed into it as sort of an Easter egg towards the end of the movie, which you and I were actually fortunate enough to already know was gonna happen, because Tony officially told us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ahead of time.
Yeah. The funny thing about Candyman 3, it has a little bit of a OG, we're talking about, with Candyman remake being an OG vampire and devil podcast, because it was something that we started very early. And even Candyman 3's got a little bit of a throwback to some old school that we're knocking the third movie, because the third movie, like you said, is the weakest of the series. And the director of Candyman 3 directed Leprechaun 2, which is a movie that we skipped when we did our Leprechaun 1 and 3.
Right.
So, yeah, we apparently do not have love for this director. Apparently,
Yeah.
well, we do. We have love for him. We're just
No.
fucking with him.
No, no, absolutely. It's just kind of one of those things where it's like, hey, look, don't take it personal, Tori. We're not trying to hurt on you, bro. We're not trying to hate on you, bro. It's just in what we do, you're batting zero.
Yeah. Now segueing into the next thing that we're going to talk about.
Yes.
You being a vampire, you know all about lords, but do you know anything about lords that like illusions?
I think we do. I think I do. I find that my kind does love a little bit of illusion when it comes to those kind of things. Because us, whether we're humanized, whether we're in bat form, whether we're here for the kill or gone in a flash, there's a lot of illusions, a little bit of smoke and mirrors that always comes with vampirism. But Clive definitely loves some Last Illusions or Lord of Illusions. And I'm excited for this one, man, because the fact of the matter is, this movie rocks.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen this movie too, so I was so glad to come. When we decided to do the Clive thing, I was like, "Oh shit, yeah, man! I love Lord of Illusions. I think it's a cool movie. I love the look of it. I love the actors in this movie. I'm a huge Famke Jensen fan, so I love her. Obviously, people might know her from the Marvel cinema world and stuff like that with the Fantastic Four or whatever the hell she was in. No, X-Men movies. That's what it was. She was an X-Men. But also, I loved her because she was in I know people don't like it to say it, but I love it. The remake of House on Haunted Hill. So, I mean, and like I said, so anyway, I love that fact. And the cool thing about it was apparently Clive was going through thousands and thousands of pictures of actresses that he wanted for this roles that he was going to put into this, and picked her out of the hat and said she's going to play this role.
Yeah. No, and it's such a cool movie. And I've also always liked Scott Bakula personally. I've seen him in so many different roles. He's a really great character actor, in my opinion. Like, I love this movie to death regardless. So this is my preferred movie for him. But I mean, I've seen him in movies like, Major League Back to the Minors, where he's playing a baseball manager. I've also, of course, seen him in movies like American Beauty, where he's, playing like like a gay couple's lawyer kind of character and stuff like that. I just think he's a really, really good actor. I just really enjoy his various work. And it's cool too, because I love Lord of Illusions, but like you, I hadn't really watched it in a little while, despite the fact that I do think it actually ranks pretty high on a watchability scale. It's just kind of, it's hard even for great movies to not get lost in a giant wall of horror movies like we both have. So sometimes it's easy to forget about certain things you have. So when I popped into the movie and he's like popping up on my screen and his name was, of course, is in the opening credits, I'm like, right, that's awesome. Let's go.
Yeah. As far as Scott, when it comes to Scott, I mean, ultimately, like I said, I love him in Lord of Illusions. But for me, it's always going to be Quantum Leap. I'm a was a Quantum Leap fan, and can't go wrong with Necessary Roughness with him in it, because you got hot ass Kathy Ireland in that movie. So
yeah. No, absolutely. And Quantum Leap is really, really good. I should go back and check out that movie, because it's been a really long time since I've seen Quantum Leap. But anyway, now I actually, there's a lot of things about this movie that I like, which is, comes as no shock to the fans, since for like 5 minutes now, neither one of us has simply shut up about the fact that we love this movie. But I really like the concept of the movie, especially the way that it starts, especially in like the crazy times now. The idea of like a 12-year-old hostage, having to take part in murdering the person that's holding them hostage. Like even just that alone is crazy because you hear stories all the time about like people not abiding by their parents, advice, and which is, don't talk to strangers and stuff like that. And there's a lot of different ways for a person to become a hostage, don't get me wrong. But just using something like that as an example, like but just having somebody so young being like the hostage of a crazy person, stuff like, like Joe Hill's, Black Phone and stuff like that when it comes to like hostage stuff. It's just I just think it's a really, really cool concept. I love the fact that it comes out of Clive's Book of Blood series, so I love the way that like the movies like come together. But again, it's that same kind of like reliving your memories, having your past haunting you, because that situation happens, 13, 14 years earlier than the main part of the movie as it takes place.
Oh yeah, 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 and it's like I said, and in this movie too, it's just so cool, like just like visually conceptual from this movie. It's one of those ones that yeah, you kind of look at the the CGI or the graphics from this movie. Now it kind of looks a little lame, but back then it was pretty cutting edge. I mean, it was like holy shit, this is some crazy shit that we've never seen before. And then like I said, then you just you add that into it with just a cool story and such like I said, it reminds me, like I said, it's just more things to love about Clive Barker's mind and just like where he goes. I mean, it's not this movie is not like particularly like as hardcore and graphic as some of the stuff that he thinks of, but
Yeah.
it's still up there as far as like psychologically like messes with you like compared to like some of his other stuff. So it's like it's not that aspect of it too.
No, it definitely is, and I love the psychological aspect of that. And even, it is Clive Barker, and there is still, you know, he loves his kind of BDSM, man, and that mask was no joke, bro.
Yeah, yeah, and like I said, you were talking about when with going into with the actors and stuff like that too. I love the fact that it's we're huge Return of the Living Dead fans in that series, and it's got our guy from Return of the Living Dead 3 in it, which a lot of people will shit on that movie, but everybody knows how much me and you love Part 3.
Love that movie. I mean, Jay Trevor and Melinda Clark, dude. I mean, dude, fuck the haters.
Yeah,
Suck my fangs, motherfuckers. That movie rocks. but
exactly.
but no, I mean, Lord of Illusion, it's so cool. And yeah, you're right, man. I mean, it's so cutting edge. Like, yeah, it doesn't have the Hellraiser Candyman bloodlust that certain people of Clive's style might get surprised by, but it bleeds your brain because it messes with you on such a deeper level. You can't help but think, you can't help but feel a little bit. And then you also kind of can't help but like wonder a little bit like, could it happen to you? And that's what I
Yeah.
really love about it. If you can find a way to tie a movie into whether it can or can't happen to you, then you've done something well.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's just like, and like I said, it's one of those like you were saying earlier. It's one of those movies where you know to no discredit to the movie because like I said, obviously you could tell that we love this movie. It's just one of those kind of Clive ones you kind of push back because you completely not push back, but you kind of forget about it a little bit. You know what I mean? And not that you intentionally try to forget about it because it's like but it's one of those ones where you think of Clive and you think of Hellraisers and Candyman and Nightbreed and all that kind of stuff like that. And then when we're getting ready to do this, I'm like, oh shit, yeah, I forgot he. And it's another one where Clive directed. You know what I mean? Where we're getting a lot of like a lot of these movies, especially stuff that's going to be coming on lately now for going on as we continue our talks about Clive Barker. Most of it's very stuff that's written by Clive or screenplayed by Clive. You know what I mean? I like the fact that we kind of went back into the director chair for him a little bit with this movie.
No, you're definitely right about that, man. And all in all, we're definitely in agreement. Just how good, how solid, and just how quality Lord of Illusions is. And it's been super awesome to get back and kind of to revisit Lord of Illusions because that movie's just so rad. It's definitely
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, man. It's fucking. It's like I said. It's such a weird turn for what you've been kind of used to with Clive.
Ghouls and Fangs, Vampire and the Devil here. We got a little question for you. Devil, there's kind of a triangle, a three-headed monster per se, when it comes to Baltimore, that I don't think people necessarily realize. We've got Edgar Allan Poe, we've got John Waters, but what else do we have?
We got the Ouija boards. Oh yeah.
Absolutely. Starting in Baltimore way back in the day, a lot of people are unfamiliar with William Fuld and Elijah Bond, who patented, and the birth of the Ouija board was right here in Baltimore. Devil and Vampire coming at you from the Witchboard Museum of Baltimore, courtesy of our friend John Kozik, who invited us out to check it out and shoot a little conversation action to let you guys all know. Of course, you've seen on our socials that we have partnered with both museums, and we couldn't be more appreciative to John for that opportunity. So whenever you're here in Baltimore, of course, right attached to the Bazaar Oddity Shop off of the Avenue, you have Witchboard Museum Baltimore. And when you're in Witch City, USA, up in Salem, Massachusetts, that's when you get to visit the Salem Witchboard Museum.
Oh yeah. If you want to see some cool stuff, see some cool boards, get some cool history, go see our boy John. Man, that guy is really, really awesome, man. That dude knows his boards. He knows his history. He's about preserving the society of witch boards and the talking boards and all that goodness. And we love it. We love the fact that they were going to bring in this museum here in Baltimore. So all the Baltimore fans or all your East Coast fans or maybe not as far away, going up to Salem, come out to Baltimore and check it out. You know what I mean? Because there's some cool stuff in this museum, and you got to check it out because the devil and the vampire said so.
That is facts right there, my friend. Again, absolutely attached to the Bazaar Oddities shop in the Avenue in Hamden for the Baltimore established Witchboard Museum, or off of Essex Street in Salem, Massachusetts for the Salem Witchboard Museum. Horns up, flags out.
And as the fog clears, and we get done talking about smoke and mirrors and illusions and stuff like that, Devil, my friend, why don't you join me as we take a ride down the highway?
Oh yeah, time to get the pedal to the metal and check out that Quicksilver Highway. Oh yeah, and a little collab going on with Clive Barker and somebody that you might have known. I mean, the Fangs might know who this guy is. I think he's wrote maybe one or two things in his career. I think only maybe one of them have been made into a movie. I'm not quite sure, but some guy named Stephen King. I don't know if they've heard of him, but yeah, let's do a little collab with Clive Barker and Stephen King on the Quicksilver Highway.
Absolutely, for sure. I mean, it's got that hitchhiker feel to it. I mean, just the idea behind a collaboration between Clive Barker and fucking Stephen King is like every like horror fan's like wet dream anyway. And so the fact that it actually has happened is like so super cool, you know.
Yeah.
And again, certain ideas, will they kind of meet in the middle. Some ideas done in different ways and stuff like that. So the idea of like psychotic hitchhikers isn't exactly like new to the horror genre, but at the same time, you can't help but be super stoked about the spin that is going to get put on it when you've got Stephen King and Clive Barker collaborating together.
Oh yeah, yeah, and then you add in Doc from the Back to the Future,
Right.
Christopher Lloyd,
Uncle
to get him
Fester.
into it. Yeah, you get Uncle Fester into it, then it just adds in more mayhem. And I just love it though. It's got that campiness. I mean, is it the greatest? It's a TV. It was a made-for-TV movie, so you're only going to get so great. But those aren't always bad either, because I mean, Stephen King's It and The Stand were both TV movies that are amazing. So sometimes just because it's a TV movie doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be bad or not. But I mean, for me, I mean, I love it. Yeah, it's campy. It's, it's not the greatest thing in the entire world. I kind of wish that you would think though, adding Clive Barker and Stephen King with the minds that both of those two have,
Yeah.
it would be a lot more darker and sinister and fucking like holy shit kind of wild. But I still love it. I mean, I love Quicksilver Highway. I love the little that I love both of the stories in it. I think both are fun. I love that Christopher Lloyd is kind of that, that Barker, that crypt keeper, your little teller of stories, and it's funny too because like in the very beginning, the girls, you know, got married and run out of gas, and the husband goes away, and she's scared, and all of a sudden he pulls up, and it's a trailer, and just like typical horror movies and typical movies anyway, you see a trailer, you go inside of it, and it's like the size of a fucking 500-story mansion.
Serious. But I mean, I also like, besides, Christopher Lloyd, which is just awesome anyway. I mean, I love the fact that Veronica Cartwright is in this movie personally, because I mean, she goes back to Alien, and she's also in The Witches of Eastwick, so she's got chops in the genre already.
Yeah, exactly. So it's got that little bit of a little bit of people who've worked with Clive in it, little people who have worked with Stephen King in it. And it's just like, like I said, it's just cool two stories. You got the one story about a traveling guy that's going around, and it's this teeth that are like a toy teeth that are like basically killing people, and it's so over the top, kind of weird, crazy, almost very Twilight Zoney.
A little bit.
It reminds me of a Twilight Zone kind of episode, but it's still fun. You know what I mean? It's got like that super camp in it, but you know. What are you gonna do? Like I said, when you got it, you got TV movies, you can only do so much sometimes. So
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and there's also the talk throughout that TV movie of body politic and stuff like that. Like how that morphs into like the storytelling where you hear the word and some people kind of like automatically want to think just like body horror and stuff like that, but it doesn't really play out that way. That's not really the concept that they're going for, which is also a little bit funny knowing that you've got the guy from Hellraiser involved.
yeah, exactly. And it's just it's cool, like the story with that one with the guy trying to like he's stilling people all the time. He's got the quick hands, and he runs into Christopher Lloyd's crazy oddity kind of store and sees that like wax hand and stuff like that, which has always been, I always like the story of like different things about like the hands, even like that movie Talk to Me or whatever that just came out had that concept of this possessed hand. So
Yeah.
yeah, anytime you got a hand that's in a movie, your best bet is to probably stay away from it.
Absolutely. No, for real. Like, like there's not enough like crazy hands in the world, when you've got Thing as like the most, for lack of a better term, level-headed of all the hands out there in horror, then you might just want to stay away from them.
Yeah, it's funny. And then, like going into this, like I said, this being a TV movie and stuff like that, it goes right into another TV series slash movie that we've talked about before with Dario and the Masters of Horror. And, Clive gets two stories in that one as well.
Yeah. I mean, I love Masters of Horror. Like, those movies are so good. I mean, we were talking about it, of course, like you said, with Dario, but like it's the best of the best. I mean, you've got all the regular super known horror directors. You've got like horror directors that like are equally as established, but maybe aren't maybe just the first names that are going to come to your head. And then you've got like crazy people like Takashi, who has his movie banned
Yeah.
off Showtime, which back then you had to pay for that channel anyway. that was always my favorite thing. Not to get too far off topic, but that was always my favorite thing about Miki's episode with Imprint was I was like, wait a minute. It was banned off Showtime, but back then you had to pay extra just to have that channel. So how could it possibly be bad enough to get banned? But then when he gets into the subject matter, what he kind of tackled in that particular movie, even at that time, it was pretty taboo and stuff like that. So you kind of like understand that. But anyway, back to Clive when it comes, of course, to Masters of Horror. Yes, Heckle's Tale is one of the ones that was featured for him, which is always just like super cool. And that was, John McNaughton's, contribution to the series.
Yeah. I love the fact that that you get these directors that sometimes are doing that, and then like people go, well, who's this guy? And the cool thing about it is like he did Wild Things, which anybody who likes Nev Campbell and what was the other chick's name? Jesus, I can't remember her name, but they're in a pool and they're doing some naughty things.
Denise
But
Richards.
yeah. But then you have he did Henry serial killer, Portrait of a Serial Killer, which is a freaking awesome movie. I love that movie, and it's got freaking my boy Merle
Merle.
Dixon in it.
Yep.
But yeah. So it's like it's awesome. But also the funny thing about it too is that it was actually this series or this episode of Masters of Horror was actually going to be directed by another alumni one of ours that we did, it was intentionally going to be a George Romero directed one, which makes kind of sense, being that the fact that this is a very sort of zombie-ish sort of tale where this guy brings his wife back from the dead, and she has this insatiable love of having sex with dead stuff. So it's like this series is you get something that you don't see too often, other than a couple other ones like Dead Alive and stuff like that. You don't get to see too much zombie sex going on, but there's a lot of zombie sex in this series.
Absolutely, for sure. And I mean, I love the idea of just a series as well that just kind of gets behind, any type of like films, especially when it comes to like putting things together. I like the fact that it was also designed as a short story situation because it just kind of makes sense, in my opinion, to go that way. Because, there's so much behind as well doing a full length movie and stuff like that. I mean, could you imagine like trying to do a series of like short movies with Masters of Horror, but allowing people to do their own style, and then having somebody like Dario, who's known for like 2+ hour movies, like trying to do like a 50-minute movie?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, that's why I kind of liked the Masters of Horror, where it comes down to it's just hour episodes, and you have some stuff, and it's like everybody knows that I love John Carpenter. I'm a huge John Carpenter fan. Obviously, Halloween is one of my favorite movies of all time. I love a lot of his movies, but later on in his career, at the time, he was doing movies that I didn't particularly like as much, with like the Ghost of Mars or the vampires that he did. They were cool concepts until that last half an hour, last 45 minutes of the movie, which I always joked around like maybe he should just do hour-long movies, because the first hour is good and the last half hour, and then the two ones that he did for Masters of Horror are amazing. And I'm like, well, that's because he had an hour.
Yeah, absolutely. So you really have to get like right to the point when it comes to those movies. And speaking of getting right to the point with Masters of Horror, we're going to go from some zombie sex to Valerie on the Stairs.
Yeah, little Valerie on the Stairs, which is bringing back, a few other people. You got Christopher Lloyd back in this one too. You got Tony Todd in this one as the demon screaming, and he's yeah, it's another cool weird concept, you know, artsy kind of Clive story. But I like it. It's about a bunch of writers that are having writer's block or something like that, and they're trying to write their great next book. and they all go to this little place that everybody's like stays at and has a room. It's kind of like a like a big huge hotel
Yeah.
sort of, but like a house that's kind of like a hotel, and that's where all of them are doing, and all of them decided to make up a story, and sometimes when you make up stories, they come back to get you.
Absolutely. Yeah, it kind of had this like, horror twist on like the Breakfast Club, like when they're all like sitting around talking about all the ways that they, fucked up to get detention, and then are like trying to like confide in each other about each of their individual issues in their personal lives and home lives and stuff like that. But this is more of like that sick twisted feel to it as well. But yeah, again, it's kind of that be careful what you wish for kind of design.
Yeah, yeah, and like I said, and then like I said, adding the Tony Todd into it, where he's just like this demon badass dude. He's like, no, man, you motherfuckers better get away, cause Valerie belongs to me.
Absolutely. It's like I said her name 5 times, so
Yeah,
she's mine now. But breaking out of Masters of Horror, I love the movie that we're about to discuss. It's got some pains to it, which kind of bummed me out, that we'll discuss. But like, I love the concept of the movie. And let's get into. We already took a cruise down the highway. Well, let's move into the rest stop so we can transfer onto a train.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it may be a crazy train, it might be a night train, but it's definitely got some meat.
It's got some blood, medium rare. Midnight Meat Train, bro. We've got Bradley Cooper and we got Vinnie Jones, but of course we've got Clive Barker. And the cool thing about this is like this concept story has been around for a while, dude. Like a while. Just sitting in Clive's brain, pocket, typewriter, computer, however you want to look at it. But this one's been a story of Clive's for quite a bit by the time it hit the big screen.
Yeah, yeah. He wrote it in 1984, and it was meant to be at the original time when he was getting ready to write it and start doing this. It was actually meant to be a Candyman sequel. Kind of continuing on this weird journey through things. But obviously it's not anything we're close to Candyman at all. Like this story is completely different. I think it's a cool concept. I remember seeing it years ago, but I hadn't seen it in a long time. So when I rewatched it again, I was like, the movie was kind of fun. I liked it. It's about, Bradley Cooper is this photographer that's trying to make a name for himself. And, he takes these photos, and thinks he's doing a good job. And the artist person's like, yeah, your shit sucks. Bring me back some shit whenever you find some good shit. So, he decides to try to get into this taboo kind of stuff. And he starts off with, him watching basically a girl almost get kidnapped and mugged by a bunch of group, hoodlums and, gang affiliated people. And he risks his life taking these photos, and they see him. And luckily, he's got a camera to save him so he doesn't get stabbed or shot or anything. And he brings these photos, and she's like, hell yeah, you need to do more crazy shit like this. So it's like, I want you to risk your life for these photos to get in my art gallery.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, I like a lot of those kind of like, I like those type of like twisted tale movies personally, where I like the idea of a person like being trapped and having to figure it out, where they don't have, a million places to run, a whole house to hide in, and things like that. That was always something I just kind of dug about Midnight Meat Train. Even similar to like a movie like Red Eye, which, yeah, isn't like, it's not the coolest movie ever made. It's not exactly the sexiest movie ever made. But like, again, the idea of being like trapped, not only on a plane, but in the seat next to like a killer is pretty cool. But that's one of the things anyway I really liked about Midnight Meat Train. I've always liked Vinnie Jones as well, because he's got like a comedic charm about him when he's playing roles in like movies like Euro Trip, but you can also use him in like action movies, which he's done with X-Men. But then I love the fact that it doesn't take a lot of effort for him to play like a sadist. Like,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love that about him.
Yeah, he's such a badass in this movie, man. He's just like chopping fucking people up with like a meat cleaver and crazy ass shit, man. He's like just somebody that like if you're driving around, riding around on a train last minute, and all of a sudden see this dude, it's like, geez, man, you're gonna do it. And it's just a cool, weird concept. Like you think it's just this this guy that's just going around killing people, and then you kind of realize that it's tied in with this meat packing factory that he works at, and then you start realizing it's underground tunnels and all this stuff like that that goes through it, and then you find out that they're killing these people to basically satisfy these monsters that are in this underground, almost like kind of like these hellish fiend kind of like, like almost like what's the one with Will Smith at the end of the day is kind of like those kind of like weird zombie kind of like decaying guys, but
Oh yeah.
really, really bad CGI though. That's the only part of this movie that really kind of does. It's such a cool movie and it's got a lot of cool action stuff in it. But yeah, the monsters and like the when it comes to some of the digital CGI stuff, it's just really, really bad.
Yeah, it's definitely a bummer there too, because it's funny as well, because you'd think that they'd be down to like throw maybe a little bit of extra money into this considering the cast that they had, but also at the same time, I mean, I guess I kind of get it as well, because this movie literally came out a year before like the Hangover series. So I like Bradley Cooper personally, but like he was just kind of like a guy in movies. He was kind of like that secondary character, Wedding Crashers, and he was in this Matthew McConaughey like dramedy movie. I think it's called like you know Out on Your Own or Put into Flight or something like that. I don't totally remember. But Bradley was kind of playing a lot of secondary characters before like the explosion of like the Hangover movies. And then he's doing a lot more, lead roles too, like Star is Born and that movie that you and I saw together about the carnival. But anyway, I think it was they kind of got a little bit of victimization when it came to like the cast being like established but not stars. But yeah, I'm definitely with you, Devil. I wish they had put at least a few more bucks into like the CGI, because like the monsters, like the horror part of it, just kind of it kind of lacked and kind of fell down a little bit, which is kind of a bummer. Didn't quite get run over by the train, but got knocked over by it.
Yeah, and I kind of like it too. Like when it gets to the end, too, where you think Bradley Cooper is doing this heroic thing by saving this victim from being butchered by Vinnie Jones, and then like he said, then you find out that he's doing this because of the monsters, and then it's like, okay, and then now Vinnie Jones is kind of like dying, and he's just like gives him like look like, yep, well, guess what, now you're next, and now he becomes basically the midnight slaughter for now, you know what I mean? He's like, they're like, yep, now it's your turn to sacrifice all these people, and it's like, yeah, you'd have just left alone shit alone. He didn't come after you. He didn't kill anybody that you knew, or didn't kill anybody that that you were friends with or loved or something like that. You thought you were doing the right thing, and then sometimes doing the right thing isn't always the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And in his case, it's like, yeah, he was doing the right thing. He was trying to, protect somebody or trying to save somebody from being murdered, and now he's got to go around and murder people.
Yeah, seriously. So it's definitely got that cool twist at the end, which I really like. That getting tied in. And again, he's got histories with those type of movies as well. Like the Carnival movie that I spoke of a moment ago. So definitely go look up Fangs. Definitely go up and look at some of Bradley Cooper's filmography. He's got some kooky roles in there that I definitely think you guys would like. But as always, my friend, when we do our directorial episodes, our writers episodes, we bring it all the way up to modern time. And when it comes to Clive Barker, his modern time filmography is more of short story based, as we bring it home with Book of Blood and Dread.
Yeah, yeah, it's that's I said that's, I like it because it's like a lot of his movies, even like the big ones, like your Candyman and your Hellraisers and stuff like that. Some are short stories, some are actual books that he wrote, but a lot of his stuff that had been turned in from the pages to the film have been short stories. They're based off a lot of his short story stuff. So yeah, I mean, as far as we're getting down we're winding that last stop of the meat train, kind of getting right into that Dread, which was I thought was another cool movie. It's another one that I don't remember seeing, but then when I started watching some of it, I remember that I had seen it at some point. But yeah, I thought it was a cool. I thought it was a cool movie. It's just that's kind of like sort of documentary, sort of not, because it's about like these students that are making a film for a school project, but it's about fear based, and stuff like that, and it's got a really cool like just a concept about it, and I thought found it as a cool movie where it was just like this crazy like underbelly of these kids trying to like find out what fears, and then the one guy just kind of taking it a little bit to the extreme.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I mean, I love the whole like, you know, paranormal thing. Everybody knows that I love that kind of stuff, especially when it gets into a little bit more like demonology. I don't like campy like, paranormal activity style. I like, demonology stuff, conjuring in insidious type stuff. But I liked the idea of like, this like abandoned house paranormal expert kind of thing, and I feel like in our current little segment we can't seem to get away from highways, dude. But like
Yeah,
just kind of that like off the road kind of thing. But I always liked Book of Blood, and the funny thing is I remember that movie getting released and it kind of missed my radar a little bit, but then I stumbled across the movie as I like saw the cover of it with just the title like carved into this dude's back, and I'm like, okay, I can definitely get down with that. No argument here.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just it's cool like that they kind of, because I mean at one time he had wrote some of these short stories, and there was like a TV series that was supposed to play a lot of that, and they were actually filmed. It's almost impossible to find these like the copies of it, I guess. So yeah, it's cool that that eventually years later he kind of went back to these Book of Bloods and with the Dread and stuff like that, where it went kind of full circle. I mean, and like I said, like we were saying earlier, Clive is still, still living, still kicking. Like I said, you can still go and see him at at cons, and I'm I'm pretty sure he's still got some tricks and naughty things up his sleeves. And like we were saying before, all these movies that were based off of his books or his short stories is only a small percentage of the stuff that he's actually wrote. I mean, people could still do a ton of movies. I mean, it's like I said, it's even like when we talk about Stephen King. I mean, you look at Stephen King, of all these movies that were based off his books or his short stories or all that kind of stuff like that. I just think it'd be, it's just crazy that how many other ones and how many other really good ones
Yeah.
still haven't been optioned to make into a film or something like that. And the same thing with Clive's work. There are a lot of other really, really, really good books that Clive did. I mean, one of the ones that I would love to see personally is the Damnation Game. It's one of my favorite books of Clive Barker. It's one that I think if it was going to get done, it probably would have been done years ago, because you really can't really with the woke community in the PC world. It's not a very, you probably have to get a foreigner to do it or something in some other country to get away with the craziness and the brutalness and the just the absurdity. And like I said, I mean that if you've never read that book, that Damnation Game is, it's a hard book to read because there's a lot of like crazy shit done to like little kids and stuff like that, and it's a very horrific book. But then again, like I said, Clive books are always really, really entailed, especially just the detail that he goes into it. But yeah, Damnation is one that Damnation game is definitely one, but there's other ones that I would love to see get put into into a movie. I mean, like I said, they don't all gotta be winners. Like we were talking about some of these ones,
Yeah,
even like I said, the midnight, Meat Train,
Yeah.
the Book of Blood, and those ones, they were decent movies. They were fun.
yeah.
I mean, they weren't the greatest. It wasn't the greatest stuff.
Oh
So
yeah.
even if somebody does one of these books, yeah, they don't have to be. It doesn't have to be a a Rob Zombie or somebody huge that or some, like Quentin Tarantino or Eli Roth has to do one of these. Even though I would personally like somebody like them to do one of the. I would love to see, like, especially with Eli Roth and being considered this new, like, torture king of directors. I think it'd be cool to see him do a movie about that Clive has done, but do one that hasn't been done before. Don't do Candyman or don't do Hellraisers or something like that. I like to see him do get an option for a Clive story or a short story that hasn't been seen yet, but with his kind of vision and his brutalness. Because, like I said, a lot of those short stories are crazy.
No, for sure, bro. Because even a movie like Dread took me a second to kind of get into that personally.
Yeah,
Because everybody knows that I'm really not big into documentation type movies. They're always kind of a buzzkill for me. They always, they don't tend to give me much of a wiggle down there. But I did like the way as it turned into that serial killer vibe, where it reminded me a little bit of like Leslie Vernon, which is actually a movie I like quite a bit. So, as I kind of gave it a chance and was watching it through, was where I was kind of like, okay, I get this now. It's connecting with me more on what I'm used to and stuff like that. It's just that initial kind of like documentation type thing where I'm just like, oh no, Clive, how could you go this way? But no, I totally get it when it comes to that. But I will say, I mean, you're right when it comes to like things like Damnation Game, because I think that would be awesome. But there is a potential silver lining as well, because while I think somebody like Eli Roth would excel when it comes to that, if Clive didn't want to go European to have a little bit of lax, you know, rules when it comes to his filmmaking, independent though can still work with him. Because to be honest, if I'm talking about right now, give me a Clive Barker, Damien Leone collaboration for Damnation Game. That's what I'll take right this second, because Damien has clearly shown that when it comes to Art the Clown, there are zero fucks given. So, especially with a lot of the talk about what's coming up when it comes to Terrifier 3, is there's some stuff that's apparently incredibly unsettling, not only for what the fans are about to witness, but even the casts as they were shooting, So something like that, if you really go into that, like, no holds bar, zero fucks, filmmaker, there's a potential to kind of keep it American, to kind of keep it, here when it comes to a movie like that. But we'll definitely have to wait and see. But as we wrap it up, bro, let me kick it back over to you. When you look at just Clive Barker as Clive Barker, what are some of the things that you take away the most from him?
He's one sick motherfucker. Nah, yeah, like I said, that's probably like my favorite thing about Clive, as far as it goes with his, with movies that have been opted, his writing and stuff like that. That he's just been 100% authentically himself,
Yeah.
and never been shy to push buttons, to push those taboos. You know, he's everybody knows he's openly gay.
Yep.
So it's what I mean, and he's always been. I mean, I don't think, as far as I can remember, I don't remember them ever being a time where Clive was in the closet, as far as like him being big and known. I mean, I'm pretty sure he probably was, maybe when during his youth and stuff. But as far as like somebody directed, as a director or a writer or stuff like that. And I love the fact that he's not afraid to put some of that kind of stuff, that forbidden love, whether it be, lovers between two males or two females, or even lovers of necrophilia or just that kind of stuff like that. Just things that are very taboo, stuff like that. The whole S&M kind of aspect of, Hellraiser. And then, like we said about the whole, Frank and all that kind of even ancestral kind of like feel to it.
Yeah.
But like I said, but he does it in a way that he's not, degrading anybody. And he's not trying to preach to anybody either, and he's not trying to be overly something or overly that, where it's just like, this is what I'm into. This is the kind of stuff that comes into my head when I think of these scary stories. These are my nightmares. And yeah, as I said, I mean, that's probably the coolest thing about Clive in my book is like I said, he's just one of those guys that like he'll just write whatever the fuck he wants to write. And luckily there's a lot of people like me and you that are, crazy deviants that love all of this crazy shit. So, it's not anything that he can do that would disappoint us, unless he decided to, write out like a serious love movie that like, like some kind of like rom-com or something like that, then I'd be like, okay, Clive, where's the killing in this movie? Hey, nobody killed anybody? Come on, there's got to be at least somebody getting killed in this movie.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm 100% with you, brother. Like, I love the unapologetic, the live your life the way it makes sense to you. Very Rob Halfordish. I mean, Rob Halford's always been very, one with himself forever, even though it took a moment for it to hit like the metal scene, where Rob was like, guys, if you ever watched what I wore on stage, that was me living out my fantasies. That wasn't me trying to make leather the new hot, style clothing wise for heavy metal music. That's common in my world. The shops that I bought these in is normal purchases in my world with the life I live. But then it takes something like, the band 2, which featured John 5, a band that I love, and well, I should say an album that I love and a band that I really wish had done more. But Rob was really able to, live out more of his life and really put it on Front Street. Where even something with Clive, where like you said, he's never been sheltered about that. Halford maybe to a small degree had to be, but not really. He just kind of did it subtly while putting it in your face. Where Clive never really so much didn't not put it out there or wasn't known. But again, he didn't like force feed it on anybody. But then you start circling back around when you knew it for Rob Halford and you're looking back, you're kind of like, wow, holy shit, it was in our face the whole time. That can even be a thing for Clive to a certain degree, where people love these movies, but maybe don't know Clive's lifestyle. But then you look back at something like Hellraiser, which we discussed at length early in the episode, but with the attire, the look, the style, the non-binary, the gender fluidity of things. It was kind of there to a certain degree, possibly the whole time, depending on where Clive's mind was when he wrote it and wanting to put it out there. Like, how much did he want people to pick up on it? Or did he kind of want to be a subtlety that people figured out or picked up on later? So it's really kind of cool when it comes to that. But overall, yeah, my brother, yeah, my devil, Clive Barker, is a great man, a great writer. So very blessed to have all these kind of like awesome, crazy, bloody, cryptic horror movies for us to enjoy all on the regularity. But we're going to let all you crazy creatures back out into the night. We're going to let all of you devil worshippers go back to the inferno. I'm going to collect all my beloved creatures of the night and all my little bats, and we're going to go back to our coffins. But we shall return. But this has been Clive Barker, in and out, up and down, blood and gore. Horns up. Bangs out.